The morning sun cast long shadows across the research station on Kepler 442c. When the attack came, 7-year-old Maya Chen was feeding the small lizard-like creatures in the biology lab when the first explosions shook the building. Her parents, Dr. James and Dr. Lisa Chen, were in the main laboratory studying plant samples when the pirates struck. Maya dropped her food container and ran to the window. Strange ships with red markings were landing near the station. People in dark armor were jumping out carrying big weapons. She heard her mother screaming her name from somewhere in the building. Maya. Maya, where are you? The little girl wanted to run to her parents, but the hallway was full of smoke and scary noises. She could hear people shouting and running. Someone was crying. The bad smell of burning things filled the air. A loud crash came from the main lab. Maya pressed herself against the wall, too scared to move. Through the smoke, she saw one of the armored figures walking down the hall. His face was covered by a metal mask, and he carried a weapon that hummed with electricity. "Search every room," the figure said in a rough voice. "The company wants all the research data, and any survivors go to the slave markets." Maya's heart beat so fast it hurt. She knew about slave markets from the scary stories older kids told. She had to hide. She had to get away. The biology lab had a back door that led to the forest. Maya had explored the woods many times with her parents, always staying close to the station. But now the forest seemed like the only safe place. She crawled under the lab tables, trying not to make noise. The back door was just a few steps away. She could hear the armored man getting closer, his heavy boots making loud sounds on the metal floor. Maya reached the door and pushed it open as quietly as she could. The forest air felt cool on her face. She looked back once, hoping to see her parents, but there was only smoke and the sound of people yelling. She ran into the trees. The forest was different from how she remembered it. The trees seemed bigger and darker. Strange sounds came from everywhere. Clicking noises, soft whistles, and rustling leaves. Maya had never been in the forest alone, and she was scared. She kept running until her legs hurt and she could not breathe properly. When she stopped, she could still hear explosions from the direction of the station, but they sounded far away now. She sat down next to a big tree with purple bark and started to cry. Maya did not know that she was being watched. In the trees above her, several creatures observed the small human child. They had never seen a human up close before, only heard stories about the tall, dangerous beings who sometimes came to their world. But this one was tiny and clearly in trouble. The creatures looked like large foxes, but they had 6 legs instead of 4, and their fur seemed to be made of tiny crystals that changed color. Right now their fur showed deep blue and purple, the colors of worry and fear. The largest of the creatures, an elder named Shimmer of Dawn, watched Maya cry. Shimmer of Dawn was old enough to remember when the first humans came to this world. The story said humans were violent and took what they wanted, but this small one seemed helpless and afraid. "She is just a youngster," whispered another creature, a younger adult named Brighttail. "Look how small she is." "Humans are dangerous," said a third voice. "The stories say they destroy everything they touch." Shimmer of Dawn's crystalline fur shifted to silver, the color of deep thinking. "But she is a child. All children deserve protection no matter what species they belong to." The explosion sounds from the station were getting louder. Smoke was rising into the sky. Maya looked up and saw the dark clouds, and she cried harder. "Those are not her people making that noise," Brighttail said softly. "Those are the bad ones. The raiders we have heard about." Shimmer of Dawn made a decision that would change everything. She climbed down from the tree, her 6 legs moving gracefully on the purple bark. The other creatures followed her, though they stayed ready to run if the human child proved dangerous. Maya looked up when she heard a soft musical sound, like wind chimes made of crystal. Standing in front of her was the most beautiful creature she had ever seen. It was as big as a large dog with fur that sparkled like jewels and kind eyes that seemed to glow with soft light. "Hello, little one," Shimmer of Dawn said in her own language, which sounded like singing. Maya did not understand the words, but the tone was gentle and caring. She stopped crying and stared at the amazing creature. More of the fox-like beings appeared from behind trees and bushes. Maya counted 6 of them, including some that seemed smaller, probably children like herself. Their crystal fur was showing different colors now, soft greens and warm yellows that somehow made Maya feel safer. Brighttail stepped forward. He was younger than Shimmer of Dawn, but still much bigger than Maya. His fur was bright gold with silver streaks. He made soft musical sounds and held out one of his paws. Maya was not sure what to do. Her parents had taught her to be careful around wild animals, but these creatures did not seem wild. They seemed intelligent, and they did not look like they wanted to hurt her. She reached out and touched Brighttail's paw. His fur felt warm and tingly, like touching a fuzzy electric light. Brighttail's colors shifted to bright pink and orange. Happy colors, Maya somehow knew. "The bad ones are coming," Shimmer of Dawn said to the others in their musical language. "We must take her to the deep forest, to the hiding places." The Velati, as they called themselves, had many secret places in their forest home. They knew every tree, every stream, every cave. They had lived here for thousands of years, long before any humans came to their world. Shimmer of Dawn gently picked up Maya with her mouth, the way a mother cat carries a kitten. Maya was scared for a moment, but the elder's mouth was warm, and she was very careful not to hurt the little girl. The group of Velati moved through the forest like flowing water. They knew paths that could not be seen, routes through thick bushes and over fallen trees that would be impossible for the pirates to follow. Maya felt like she was flying as Shimmer of Dawn carried her deeper into the woods. They stopped at a place where several large trees grew close together, their roots creating natural hiding spots. The Velati had made this into a shelter long ago, weaving branches together to make walls and using soft moss for beds. Shimmer of Dawn gently set Maya down on a bed of silver moss. The little girl looked around in wonder. The shelter was like something from a fairy tale, with walls made of living wood and a ceiling of leaves that let through just enough light to see. "Water," Brighttail said, and Maya understood that word. He brought her a large leaf filled with clear water from a nearby stream. Maya drank gratefully. She was very thirsty after all the running and crying. The youngest of the Velati, barely bigger than Maya herself, approached shyly. Her fur was pale blue with white spots, and her eyes were huge and curious. She made soft questioning sounds and tilted her head. "That is Gentle Song," Brighttail said, though Maya did not understand the words. He was trying to learn human speech from the sounds Maya made. "She wants to know if you are hurt." Maya shook her head and tried to smile. The young Velati's fur brightened to happy yellow, and she settled down next to Maya like a living, breathing pillow. Over the next few hours, the Velati took turns watching for danger, while others gathered food for their unexpected guest. They brought Maya sweet fruits and nuts, testing each food carefully to make sure it was safe for humans to eat. Brighttail remembered seeing human scientists eating similar foods. As the day went on, Maya began to feel safer. The Velati were gentle and kind, and they seemed to understand that she was lost and scared. When she started crying again, thinking about her parents, Gentle Song nuzzled her with a soft, warm snout. That night, the Velati took turns standing guard while Maya slept curled up between Gentle Song and another young Velati. Their crystal fur provided warmth, and their soft breathing helped her feel less alone. But the pirates were not giving up. Over the next several days, search parties combed the forest looking for survivors from the research station. The Velati could hear them crashing through the woods, shouting to each other and using loud machines to scan for life signs. The Velati were pacifists by nature. They had never fought a war or hurt another living being, but they were not helpless. They knew their forest better than anyone, and they had abilities the pirates did not expect. When a search party came too close to their hiding place, the Velati used their natural camouflage to become nearly invisible. Their crystal fur could match the colors of their surroundings perfectly. They also could communicate with the forest animals, asking the birds to make noise in the wrong direction and convincing the small mammals to run across the pirates' path to confuse their scanners. Brighttail became especially good at leading the searchers away from Maya. He would show himself just long enough to catch their attention, then disappear into thick bushes or climb trees too narrow for humans to follow. The pirates never got a good look at him, but they wasted many hours chasing shadows. "What kind of animals live on this planet?" one frustrated pirate asked another as they stumbled through the forest for the third day. "Nothing dangerous according to the files," his partner replied. "Just some fox-like creatures. Probably just scared animals running around." The pirates did not know they were being deliberately led in circles by some of the most intelligent beings on the planet. Maya was learning to communicate with her protectors. She could not speak their musical language, but she was starting to understand some of their simpler words. Brighttail was also learning human words, especially thank you, which Maya said many times each day. The young Velothi taught Maya their names by pointing to themselves and singing their name songs. Shimmer of Dawn's song sounded like morning light dancing on water. Brighttail's song was like wind through golden leaves. Gentle Song's melody was soft and sweet like a lullaby. Maya tried to sing her own name the way they did, but human voices could not make the same crystal-like sounds. The Velothi created a special name song for her that sounded like Small Bright Spirit, which made Maya feel happy and accepted. After 2 weeks, the pirates began to get angry and desperate. They had found no survivors and very little of value from the research station. Their leader decided to send a message to anyone who might still be hiding. The search parties began setting fires. Maya and the Velothi smelled the smoke long before they saw the flames. Shimmer of Dawn's fur turned deep red with alarm as she realized what was happening. "They are burning the forest," she told the others in her musical language. "We must move to the stone caves near the great waterfall." The stone caves were far from their current hiding place, and the journey would be dangerous with search parties still in the forest. But the fires were spreading quickly, and soon their shelter would not be safe. The Velothi gathered what they could carry and prepared to move. Maya could see how worried they were by the dark colors in their fur. She wished she could do something to help, but she was just a small human child in a world that seemed too big and dangerous. The journey to the caves took all night. The Velothi moved carefully, avoiding the search parties and the spreading fires. Several times they had to hide in thick bushes while pirates passed nearby. Maya learned to be very quiet, understanding that any sound could put all of them in danger. When they finally reached the stone caves, Maya was exhausted and scared. The caves were dark and cold, not warm and cozy like the tree shelter, but they were safe from the fires, and Shimmer of Dawn assured her they would only need to stay there for a little while. On the third day in the caves, disaster struck. A group of pirates running from a fire they had accidentally started stumbled into the cave area. They were lost and angry, and they had their weapons ready. Maya was sleeping when Brighttail's urgent warning song woke her up. The adult Velothi were moving quickly, trying to hide the evidence that anyone had been living in the caves, but there was not enough time. The pirates entered the main cave just as Shimmer of Dawn was trying to hide Maya behind a rock formation. One of the armored figures saw movement and raised his weapon. "Something's in here," he shouted to his companions. "Probably just animals, but let's check it out." Shimmer of Dawn made a decision that showed the true courage of her people. Instead of running or hiding, she stepped directly between Maya and the armed pirates. Her crystal fur blazed with silver and gold, the colors of protection and fierce determination. The pirates were startled by the sudden appearance of the large, glittering creature. They had never seen anything like the Velothi before. "What is that thing?" one of them muttered, raising his weapon. "Just some kind of local animal," another replied. "Shoot it and let's keep moving." But before they could fire, Brighttail and the other adult Velothi appeared, surrounding Shimmer of Dawn and Maya in a protective circle. Their fur blazed with warning colors, deep reds and bright oranges that somehow made it clear they would fight to defend the small human child. The pirates hesitated. These creatures were obviously intelligent and they were clearly protecting something important. The lead pirate stepped forward, trying to see what they were guarding. That was when Maya made her own brave choice. She stepped out from behind Shimmer of Dawn and looked directly at the armored figures. "Please do not hurt them," she said in her small, clear voice. "They saved me." "They are good," the pirates stared in shock. They had been searching for survivors for weeks, and here was a human child being protected by alien animals. Well, the leader said, lowering his weapon slightly. "Looks like we found something valuable after all. The slavers will pay good money for a human child, especially one this young." But the pirates had made a mistake. They had underestimated both the intelligence and the determination of the Velothi. As the lead pirate reached toward Maya, Shimmer of Dawn did something that went against every instinct of her peaceful people. She attacked. The elder Velothi was not a fighter, but she was desperate to protect the child who had become like family to her. She leaped at the pirate, her crystal fur blazing like fire, her 6 legs giving her speed and agility the armored human could not match. The pirate fell backward, his weapon flying from his hands. Shimmer of Dawn landed on top of him, pinning him down with her weight. Her fur was now blazing pure white, a color the Velothi used only in the most extreme situations. The other pirates raised their weapons, but Brighttail and the others were already moving. The young Velothi used his speed to confuse the armored figures, darting between their legs and making them stumble. The other adults created chaos by knocking over equipment and making loud warning calls that echoed through the caves. In the confusion, Maya ran deeper into the cave system, following passages the Velothi had shown her. She knew the pirates would follow, but she also knew that Shimmer of Dawn and the others would be right behind her, still protecting her even though it put them in terrible danger. The chase through the dark caves seemed to last forever. Maya's small size helped her squeeze through narrow passages that slowed down the larger pirates. Behind her, she could hear the Velothi fighting, not with violence but with cleverness and courage, using their knowledge of the caves to protect both Maya and themselves. Finally, Maya reached a passage so narrow that only she could fit through. She crawled into the tiny space and found herself in a small chamber, lit by glowing crystal formations. It was beautiful and peaceful, and she felt safe for the first time in hours. A few minutes later, Brighttail squeezed through the passage behind her. His golden fur was dim with exhaustion, but his eyes were bright with relief. "Safe now, small bright spirit," he said in his halting human words. "Bad ones cannot follow." One by one, the other Velothi appeared in the crystal chamber. They were all tired and scared, but they were alive. Maya hugged each of them, trying to show how grateful she was for their protection. But when Shimmer of Dawn finally crawled through the passage, Maya could see that the elder was badly hurt. Part of her beautiful crystal fur was burned, and she moved slowly and carefully. "You are hurt because of me," Maya whispered, touching Shimmer of Dawn's injured side gently. The elder Velothi's fur shifted to soft pink and gold, the colors of love and family. She nuzzled Maya gently and sang a soft song that needed no translation. She was saying that protecting Maya had been worth any price. That night, in the safety of the crystal chamber, the Velothi took care of their injured elder while Maya sat close by, holding gentle song and listening to Brighttail's quiet songs. She understood now that these amazing beings had risked everything to keep her safe. She also understood that she was no longer just a lost human child. She had become part of a Velothi family, and they had become part of hers. Outside the caves, the pirates eventually gave up their search and returned to their ships. The fires burned themselves out, leaving scars on the forest that would heal in time. The research station was destroyed, but the most important thing, one small human life, had been saved by the courage and kindness of beings who had never expected anything in return. Maya fell asleep that night between her alien protectors, not knowing that their act of kindness would soon change the entire galaxy. All she knew was that she was safe, surrounded by friends who would protect her no matter what dangers came. The crystal formations in the chamber glowed softly through the night, and the Velothi took turns keeping watch, their fur showing the gentle colors of peace and family love. Maya Chen, 7 years old and far from home, slept peacefully under the protection of the bravest beings she had ever known. 3 months had passed since the pirate attack when the UES Determination dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 442c. Captain Sarah Rodriguez stood on the bridge, looking at the planet that had been silent for too long. The research station's emergency beacon had been broadcasting for weeks before the colonial fleet could respond to the distress call. "Any signs of life down there?" Captain Rodriguez asked her science officer. "The station appears to be destroyed, Captain," Lieutenant Chen replied, studying his instruments. "But I am picking up some unusual energy readings from the forest areas." "Could be survivors," Captain Rodriguez nodded grimly. Pirate attacks on remote research stations were becoming more common, and survivors were rare. The Crimson Fleet was known for taking captives to sell in the slave markets. Still, they had to check. "Prepare a landing party," she ordered. "Full medical team and security detail. If anyone survived 3 months in that wilderness, they are going to need help." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the expedition's xenopsychologist, joined the landing party at the last minute. She had studied every known species in this sector, but the energy readings from the planet were unlike anything in her files. "Captain, those energy signatures," she said, as they boarded the shuttle. "They are not from human technology. There might be intelligent native life down there." "Hostile?" Captain Rodriguez asked. "Unknown. The patterns are very complex, almost like communication signals." The shuttle landed near the burned remains of the research station. The landing party spread out, scanning for any signs of life among the twisted metal and ash. The forest beyond looked dark and forbidding, with strange purple trees and unfamiliar sounds. "Over here," Sergeant Martinez called from the edge of the forest. "I have got movement in the trees." The team moved carefully toward the forest, weapons ready but not aimed. As they approached the tree line, they heard something that made them all stop in amazement. It was a human voice, singing. "That sounds like a child," Dr. Vasquez whispered. The singing was coming from deeper in the forest, mixed with other sounds that were definitely not human. Musical notes that seemed to come from crystal wind chimes, harmonizing with the human voice in a way that was both beautiful and impossible. "Maya?" Captain Rodriguez called out, checking the list of station personnel. "Maya Chen? Can you hear me?" The singing stopped. There was a long moment of silence, and then they heard rustling in the bushes ahead. What emerged from the forest made the entire landing party stare in wonder. A small human girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, stepped into the clearing. Her clothes were torn and patched with what looked like woven grass, but she appeared healthy and unafraid. Her hair was decorated with small crystals that caught the sunlight, but she was not alone. Following behind her were 6 of the most beautiful creatures the humans had ever seen. They looked like large foxes with 6 legs, but their fur appeared to be made of living crystal that shifted colors as they moved. The largest one, clearly an adult, had silver and gold fur with intricate patterns. A younger one with bright golden fur stayed close to the little girl's side. "Hello?" the girl said in perfect human standard, though her voice had a slight musical quality to it. "Are you here to help? These are my friends. They saved me." Captain Rodriguez slowly holstered her weapon and knelt down to the child's level. "I am Captain Rodriguez of the Colonial Fleet. Are you Maya Chen?" "Yes," Maya replied. "These are the Velathi. They protected me when the bad people came." She gestured to the crystal-furred beings behind her. "This is Shimmer of Dawn," she said, pointing to the largest one. "And this is Brighttail. He is learning to speak human words." As if understanding his name, the golden-furred creature stepped forward and made a sound that was clearly an attempt at human speech. "Hello," Brighttail said slowly, his voice having the same musical quality as Maya's had developed. "Maya, safe. We protect." Dr. Vasquez felt her heart skip a beat. This was first contact with an intelligent alien species, and it was happening because they had protected a human child. "Maya, are your parents?" Captain Rodriguez asked gently. Maya's face fell. "I do not know. The pirates took everyone away. I ran into the forest and the Velathi found me. They have been taking care of me ever since." Shimmer of Dawn, sensing Maya's sadness, moved closer and nuzzled the little girl gently. Her crystal fur shifted to soft blue and green colors that somehow conveyed comfort and love. "How long have you been with them?" Dr. Vasquez asked, her scientific mind racing with questions. 3 months, I think," Maya replied. "They taught me their language, and I taught them some human words. They are very smart. They know everything about the forest and the animals. They saved me from the fires." "Fires?" Sergeant Martinez asked, looking around at the burn scars on nearby trees. "The pirates set the forest on fire when they could not find me," Maya explained. "Shimmer of Dawn got hurt protecting me from the flames." She touched the larger Velathi's side gently, where patches of fur grew in slightly different colors, marking old injuries. Captain Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine. These aliens had risked their lives to protect a human child they did not even know. "Maya," she said carefully, "we need to take you somewhere safe, somewhere with other humans." Maya looked worried and turned to speak to the Velathi in their musical language. The conversation that followed was unlike anything the humans had ever heard. Maya's voice had learned to make crystal-like sounds that blended with the aliens' natural speech. It was clear that she was not just communicating with them. She was part of their family. Brighttail responded with a long, complex song that seemed to express many emotions. Other Velathi added their voices, creating a harmony that brought tears to Dr. Vasquez's eyes. "What are they saying?" Captain Rodriguez asked. "They want to make sure I will be safe," Maya replied. "They do not want to lose me, but they understand that I need to be with my own kind." Brighttail says he will miss teaching me forest songs. The smallest of the Velathi, barely bigger than Maya herself, approached and rubbed against the little girl's legs. Her fur was pale blue with white spots, and her large eyes were clearly sad. "This is Gentle Song," Maya said, picking up the young alien and hugging her. "She is like my little sister now." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward slowly, not wanting to frighten the aliens. Maya, can you tell them that we mean no harm? That we are grateful for what they did? Maya translated, and the response from the Velothi was immediate. Their fur brightened to warm gold and pink colors, and they began making soft musical sounds that were clearly welcoming. They say any friend of mine is their friend too, Maya reported. Shimmer of Dawn wants to know if you will hurt the forest. Tell them we only want to help, Captain Rodriguez said. We want to understand them and learn from them. As Maya translated, Dr. Vasquez set up her recording equipment. This was the most important first contact in human history, and every word needed to be documented. Maya, can you ask them about their society, their culture? Dr. Vasquez requested. What followed was the most remarkable interview Dr. Vasquez had ever conducted. Speaking through Maya, the Velothi revealed a complex and ancient civilization. They had lived on this world for thousands of years, developing sophisticated philosophies and social structures without ever developing advanced technology. They lived in family groups called pods, led by elders like Shimmer of Dawn. They had oral histories that went back 50 generations, complex rituals for marking the seasons, and an intricate understanding of their planet's ecosystem. They do not build cities or machines, Maya explained. They say they do not need to change the world because the world is already perfect. They just need to understand how to live in harmony with it. Ask them why they saved you, Dr. Vasquez said, though she suspected she knew the answer. Maya sang the question in the Velothi language. Shimmer of Dawn's response was long and beautiful, full of complex melodies that seemed to express deep emotions. She says that all young ones deserve protection, no matter what species they belong to, Maya translated. She says they could sense my bright spirit song and knew I was good. She says protecting children is the most important duty of any intelligent being. Captain Rodriguez felt a lump in her throat. These beings had risked everything for a human child based purely on their moral principles. They want to know something, Maya continued. They want to know if all humans are like the pirates who hurt the forest. Tell them no, Captain Rodriguez said firmly. Tell them that the pirates are criminals. Most humans try to be good like they are. The Velothi's response was a chorus of relieved musical sounds. Their fur shifted to bright, happy colors. Maya, we need to take you to our ship, Dr. Vasquez said gently. You need medical attention, and there are people who are very worried about you. Maya looked torn. She clearly wanted to go with the humans, but leaving the Velothi was breaking her heart. Brighttail seemed to understand her conflict. He approached and began singing a complex song that was both sad and beautiful. When he finished, Maya was crying. What did he say? Captain Rodriguez asked. He said that young birds must leave the nest when they are ready to fly, Maya whispered. He said that I am ready to return to my own flock, but I will always have a place in their pod. He said he will miss me every day. Dr. Vasquez made a decision that would change everything. Maya asked them if Brighttail would like to come with us, just for a little while to make sure you are safe. Maya's face lit up as she translated the offer. Brighttail's response was immediate and enthusiastic. His fur blazed with excited gold and silver colors. He says yes, Maya laughed. He says he wants to see the sky nest where humans live. And so, an hour later, the shuttle lifted off from Kepler 442c, carrying the most unusual passengers in colonial fleet history. Maya Chen sat next to Brighttail, teaching him the names of the stars they could see through the viewport. The young Velothi's crystal fur reflected the starlight, creating patterns that filled the shuttle with gentle, moving rainbows. When they arrived at the UES determination, word of their passengers had already spread throughout the ship. Crew members lined the corridors to get a glimpse of the alien who had protected a human child. Brighttail took it all in with wide, curious eyes, his fur showing constant shifts of amazement and wonder. Captain Rodriguez arranged for Maya to have her own quarters. With Brighttail given a space right next door, the ship's doctor checked Maya thoroughly, and was amazed to find her in perfect health despite 3 months in an alien wilderness. These Velothi clearly know how to care for a human child, Dr. Martinez reported. She shows no signs of malnutrition, disease, or psychological trauma. In fact, she seems remarkably well-adjusted and happy. That evening, Maya and Brighttail gave their first formal interview to Dr. Vasquez. The xenopsychologist was amazed by what she learned. The Velothi have a complex understanding of emotions and relationships, she told Captain Rodriguez later. They communicate not just with words, but with the colors of their fur and the musical qualities of their voices. Maya has learned to read these signals, and they have learned to interpret human facial expressions and body language. What about their intelligence level? The captain asked. Extraordinary. They may not have technology, but their social and philosophical development is far beyond what we usually see in pre-technological species. They have concepts of ethics, justice, and moral responsibility that are remarkably sophisticated. Dr. Vasquez paused, looking at her notes. Captain, they saved Maya not because they expected anything in return, but because their moral code demanded it. They risked their lives for a member of a species they had never met before, simply because she was a child in need of protection. Meanwhile, in Maya's quarters, she was teaching Brighttail about human technology. The young Velothi was fascinated by everything. The lights that turned on with a switch, the food that came from machines, the windows that showed the stars outside. Your people are very clever, Brighttail said in his improving human speech. But do you ever miss the simple things? The sound of wind in leaves? The feel of earth under your feet? Maya thought about this seriously. Sometimes. But we build these ships so we can explore and meet new friends, like meeting you and your family. Brighttail's fur shifted to warm pink and gold. Meeting you changed us too, small bright spirit. We learned that beings can be family even if they are different species. 3 days later, they reached the nearest human colony world. Captain Rodriguez had been in constant communication with Colonial Command, and the story of Maya and the Velothi had already reached Earth. The footage of Maya's reunion with the Velothi had been transmitted throughout human space. The image of a small human girl hugging creatures that looked like living jewels had captured the imagination of billions of people. Captain Rodriguez, came a message from Colonial Command. You are ordered to return to Earth immediately with both the child and the alien representative. This is being classified as a Priority 1 first contact situation. As they prepared to leave for Earth, Maya spent hours recording messages for the Velothi back on Kepler 442c. Brighttail helped her translate complex human concepts into the musical language of his people. Tell Shimmer of Dawn that human doctors want to help heal her burns, Maya said into the recorder. Tell Gentle Song that I will send her pictures of Earth. Tell everyone that I will never forget them. Brighttail's translation was a beautiful song that seemed to carry all of Maya's love and gratitude across the stars' dawn. The final night before they reached Earth, Maya and Brighttail sat in the ship's observation lounge looking out at the stars. Other crew members had gathered around them, listening to their stories about life in the Velothi forest. Do you think humans and Velothi can be friends forever? Maya asked Brighttail. The young Velothi considered this carefully, his fur shifting through thoughtful silver and blue colors. I think, he said slowly, that when two species learn to love each other's children, they become more than friends. They become family. Dr. Vasquez, who was recording their conversation, felt tears in her eyes. She was beginning to understand that this first contact was unlike any other in human history. It was not based on trade agreements or territorial negotiations. It was based on love, sacrifice, and the simple recognition that protecting children was the highest calling of any intelligent species. As Earth grew larger in the view screen, Maya fell asleep against Brighttail's warm crystal fur. The young Velothi kept watch over her, his colors shifting to the gentle patterns that meant protection and family love. Captain Rodriguez watched them from across the lounge and knew that everything was about to change. When humanity learned the full story of what the Velothi had done for one small human child, the galaxy would never be the same. The ship's communication officer approached quietly. Captain, we are receiving hundreds of messages from Earth. News crews, government officials, xenobiologists. Everyone wants to interview the child and the alien. Captain Rodriguez nodded. Put them all on hold. Maya and Brighttail have been through enough. When we land, they will tell their story when they are ready and not before. Looking back at the sleeping child and her alien protector, Captain Rodriguez made a silent promise. Humanity owed the Velothi a debt that could never be fully repaid. Whatever happened next, she would make sure that debt was acknowledged and honored. The stars wheeled slowly past the observation windows as the UES Determination carried its precious cargo toward Earth. In a few days, Maya, Chen, and Brighttail would stand before the most powerful humans in the galaxy and tell their story. It was a story that would change the course of history, launch 1,000 ships and teach humanity what it truly meant to be the guardians of those who could not protect themselves. But for now, it was simply the story of a little girl and the crystal-furred friends who had loved her enough to risk everything for her safety. And in the quiet of the ship's night cycle, that was enough. The United Nations headquarters on Earth had never seen anything like it. Reporters from every major news network crowded the plaza outside the building, while inside, delegates from across human space gathered for what many were calling the most important session in UN history. Maya Chen, now 8 years old, sat quietly in the witness preparation room with Brighttail beside her. The young Velathi's crystal fur was showing nervous silver and blue patterns as he tried to understand all the activity around them. "There are so many humans," Brighttail said in his much improved human speech. "More than all the trees in our forest." Maya reached over and touched his paw gently. "They want to hear our story. They want to learn about your people." Dr. Elena Vasquez entered the room carrying a tablet full of notes. Over the past month since their arrival on Earth, she had become Maya and Brighttail's advocate and protector, making sure they were not overwhelmed by the constant attention. "Are you ready?" she asked gently. "Remember, just tell the truth about what happened. Let them see how brave and kind the Velathi are." Maya nodded, though she felt nervous butterflies in her stomach. Brighttail's fur shifted to warm gold and pink, the colors that meant he was trying to be brave for her sake. In the main assembly hall, Secretary General Amara Okafor called the session to order. The huge room was packed with delegates, scientists, military officials, and corporate representatives. Holographic displays showed the session being broadcast live to every human colony in the galaxy. "We gathered today to hear testimony about humanity's first contact with the Velathi species," Secretary General Okafor announced. This contact was unique in that it began not with formal diplomacy, but with an act of extraordinary courage and kindness. Maya's parents, Dr. James and Dr. Lisa Chen, were called to testify first. They had been rescued from a pirate slave ship 3 weeks after Maya's disappearance and had been frantically searching for their daughter ever since. "Our daughter was 7 years old when the pirates attacked," Dr. Lisa Chen said, her voice shaking with emotion. "We thought we had lost her forever. When we learned that she had not only survived but had been protected and cared for by an alien species we had never even known existed." She paused, wiping away tears. "The Velathi saved our daughter's life. More than that, they loved her and made her part of their family. There are no words to express our gratitude." Dr. James Chen stepped forward. "I have spent my career studying alien life forms," he said, "but I have never encountered a species that showed such pure, selfless kindness. The Velathi protected Maya for 3 months, asking nothing in return. They shared their food, risked their lives, and treated her as if she were their own child." Next, Captain Sarah Rodriguez testified about the rescue and first contact. She described finding Maya healthy and happy, surrounded by alien protectors who had clearly devoted themselves to her care. "The Velathi showed no fear of our weapons, no concern for their own safety," Captain Rodriguez reported. "Their only concern was for Maya's well-being. When we offered to take Brighttail to our ship to ensure Maya felt safe during the transition, he agreed immediately, despite having never left his homeworld before." Admiral Marcus Thompson, head of the colonial fleet, presented the strategic situation. "The Velathi homeworld, Kepler 442c, is located in a region rich with rare minerals and of significant strategic importance," he explained. "Several major corporations have already filed development claims for the system. Additionally, our intelligence indicates that the hegemony has begun scouting the area." At the mention of the hegemony, murmurs went through the assembly. Humanity's primary rival in the galaxy was known for their aggressive expansion and their treatment of less advanced species. "If we do not act to protect the Velathi," Admiral Thompson continued, "they will almost certainly be enslaved or destroyed by either corporate exploitation or hegemony conquest. These beings saved a human child. We cannot abandon them now." But not everyone in the assembly agreed. Representative Marcus Steele of the Terran Corporate Alliance stood to speak. "While we all sympathize with this touching story," Steele said, "we must consider the practical implications. The Velathi are a pre-technological species with no apparent resources or strategic value. Committing significant military resources to protect them would be economically irresponsible. Furthermore, added Representative Chen Wei from the Outer Colonies Coalition, we have our own people to protect. Colonial settlements are under constant threat from pirates and hostile aliens. Can we really afford to send our fleet to guard a species that offers us nothing in return? The debate that followed was heated. Some delegates argued that protecting the Velothi was a moral imperative, while others insisted that humanity could not afford to become the galaxy's police force. Then Maya and Brighttail were called to testify. Maya walked to the witness podium with Brighttail beside her, his 6 legs moving gracefully across the polished floor. The assembly fell silent as they saw the small human girl and her crystal-furred companion. "Hello," Maya said, her voice clear and strong despite her nervousness. "My name is Maya Chen, and this is my friend Brighttail. I want to tell you about the Velothi people." For the next hour, Maya described her 3 months with the Velothi. She spoke about Shimmer of Dawn's courage in protecting her from the pirates, about Gentle Song's kindness in sharing her food, about the way the entire pod had worked together to keep her safe. "They did not have to help me," Maya said. They had never seen a human before. They only knew scary stories about us. But when they found me crying and scared, they chose to help anyway, because that is who they are. Brighttail then spoke for himself, his musical voice carrying clearly through the assembly hall speakers. "My people have a saying," he said slowly, his human words carefully chosen. "The measure of a species is not in their strength or their weapons, but in how they treat the helpless." When we found small bright spirit Maya, she was helpless and afraid. To abandon her would have been to abandon our souls. He paused, his fur shifting to deep blue and silver, the colors of serious thought. "We ask for nothing from humans except understanding. We do not want your technology or your wealth. We only want to live in peace in our forest home as we have for thousands of years. But if others come to hurt us, we cannot defend ourselves. We are not warriors." The assembly was completely silent as Brighttail continued. "Maya taught us that humans can be kind and good. She learned our songs and sang with us under the stars. She became our sister in all but blood. If humans truly care for their young ones, then please, protect those who protected her." When Maya and Brighttail finished their testimony, there was not a dry eye in the assembly hall. But the debate resumed, with corporate representatives and military officials arguing about costs and strategic priorities. That was when Dr. Elena Vasquez requested permission to address the assembly. As the leading expert on Velothi psychology and culture, her words carried significant weight. "Honored delegates," she began, "I have spent the past month studying Velothi society through my interactions with Brighttail and the communications we have received from his homeworld. What I have learned challenges many of our assumptions about intelligence and civilization." She activated a holographic display showing images of Velothi society that Brighttail had helped them understand. The Velothi have no armies, no weapons, no concept of war. They have lived in perfect harmony with their environment for over 10,000 years. Their social structures are based entirely on cooperation and mutual care. They have achieved something that many species, including our own, still struggle with: a truly peaceful society. That is exactly why they are vulnerable. Representative Steele interrupted. They cannot defend themselves and they have no strategic value. Dr. Vasquez turned to face him directly. "Representative Steele, you are wrong on both counts. The Velothi have immense strategic value, but not in the way you think. They represent proof that it is possible for an intelligent species to live without violence, without destroying their environment, without endless conflict. They are living examples of what we could become." She gestured to Maya and Brighttail. "And as for their inability to defend themselves, that is precisely why protecting them is so important. If humanity is to be respected among the stars, we must show that we protect the innocent, not just those who can benefit us." The debate continued for hours, but the turning point came when Maya asked to speak again. "May I say something?" the 8-year-old asked, stepping back to the podium. Secretary General Okafor nodded. "Of course, Maya." Maya looked out at the assembled delegates, then up at the cameras that were broadcasting her words across the galaxy. "I know I am just a kid," she said, "but I understand what you are talking about. Some of you think protecting the Velothi will cost too much. Some of you think they are not important enough to worry about." She paused, reaching over to touch Brighttail's paw. "But I want to tell you what Shimmer of Dawn said to me on my last night in the forest. She said that the true measure of a person or a species is not how they treat those who can help them, but how they treat those who cannot. Maya's voice grew stronger as she continued. The Velothi could not help me get home. They could not give me anything valuable. They could only give me love and protection, and they gave it freely, even when it put them in danger. She looked directly into the main camera. If we do not protect them now, what does that say about who we are? What does it say about humanity? The whole galaxy is watching to see what we will do for the people who saved one of our children. The assembly hall erupted in applause. Delegates were on their feet, cheering for the small girl who had spoken more wisdom than many experienced politicians. When the noise died down, Secretary General Okafor called for the formal vote. The motion before us is Resolution 2157, the Guardian Species Declaration, which would place the Velothi people under the active protection of humanity. All in favor? The vote was not even close. Representatives from across human space voted overwhelmingly in favor of the resolution. Even some of the corporate delegates, swayed by Maya's speech and the public sentiment it had generated, voted yes. Resolution 2157 is hereby adopted, Secretary General Okafor announced. For the first time in human history, an entire alien species is placed under our protection. Not as subjects or protectorates, but as honored friends. The Guardian Species Declaration was comprehensive and unprecedented. It established the Velothi Protection Protocol, allocating a significant portion of the colonial fleet to defend their system. It created the first-ever interspecies cultural exchange program. Most importantly, it declared that any threat to the Velothi people would be considered a direct threat to humanity itself. Admiral Thompson was given command of the new Guardian fleet, with orders to establish a permanent defense station in the Velothi system. Captain Rodriguez was promoted to admiral and placed in charge of day-to-day protection operations. Maya was appointed as the first human Velothi cultural ambassador, a position created specifically for her. Despite her young age, no one was better qualified to bridge the gap between the two species. As the assembly session ended, Maya and Brighttail were surrounded by reporters and well-wishers. The young Velothi's fur was blazing with gold and pink, the colors of joy and excitement. "What will you do now?" a reporter asked Maya. "I want to go back to Kepler 442c, Maya replied without hesitation. "I want to see my Velothi family again, and I want to help humans and Velothi become friends." "And you, Brighttail?" another reporter asked. "What do you think of humanity's decision?" Brighttail's response was in the musical Velothi language, which Maya translated. "He says that today, two species became one family. He says that his people will remember this kindness for 10,000 generations." That evening, Maya and Brighttail attended a celebration dinner in their honor. Leaders from across human space came to meet them and hear their story firsthand. But the most important moment came when Maya's parents were finally able to spend quiet time with Brighttail, thanking him personally for saving their daughter. "You gave us back our child," Dr. Lisa Chen said, tears in her eyes. "How can we ever repay you?" Brighttail's fur shifted to gentle blue and silver as he considered the question. "Your daughter gave us something too," he said in his careful human speech. "She taught us that the universe is full of friends we have not met yet. That is payment enough." Later that night, Maya sat in her room at the UN guest quarters, video calling Shimmer of Dawn and the other Velothi back on Kepler 442c. The connection was somewhat fuzzy due to the distance, but she could see their crystal fur and hear their musical voices clearly. "Tell them about the vote," Brighttail said, his own fur glowing with excitement. Maya explained the Guardian Species Declaration in the Velothi language, her young voice carrying the musical tones she had learned so well. The response from the homeworld was a chorus of amazed and grateful songs. "Shimmer of Dawn wants to know if this means the bad ones cannot hurt us anymore," Maya translated. "Tell her that humanity will protect the Velothi with their lives, Ka," came a voice from the doorway. Maya turned to see Admiral Thompson entering the room. The senior military officer knelt down to her level. "Maya, I want you to know that what you and Brighttail did today changed everything. The Guardian fleet will be the finest force humanity has ever assembled. No one will threaten the Velothi while we draw breath." He looked at Brighttail. "Your people saved our child. Now we will protect yours. This is not just a promise, it is a sacred oath." Brighttail's fur blazed with silver and gold, the colors of honor and gratitude. As Maya prepared for bed, she thought about everything that had happened. A year ago, she had been just another research station kid, playing with alien lizards and learning about plants. Now she was an ambassador between species, and her alien friends were under the protection of the most powerful military force in human space. "Brighttail," she said as the young Velothi settled down on the cushioned area that had been prepared for him. "Do you think we really can be friends forever? Humans and Velothi?" Brighttail's fur shifted to the warm pink and gold that meant family love. "Small bright spirit," he said, using her Velothi name. "Today your species proved that they understand what mine learned long ago. The strongest bonds are not made by treaties or trade agreements. They are made by love, sacrifice, and the promise to protect each other's children." Outside their window, the lights of Earth's greatest cities sparkled like stars. Tomorrow they would begin the journey back to Kepler 442c, where the Guardian fleet was already assembling to protect the forest world and its gentle people. Maya fell asleep thinking about home, both her human home and her Velothi one. For the first time in her young life, she understood that home was not just a place. It was wherever people loved you enough to risk everything for your safety. And now 2 entire species had found that kind of home with each other. The Guardian Species Declaration would face tests in the years to come. There would be those who challenged humanity's resolve, who questioned the wisdom of protecting a species that offered no obvious benefits. But on this night, as an 8-year-old ambassador slept peacefully beside her crystal-furred friend, the foundation was laid for one of the strongest alliances in galactic history. It was an alliance born not of politics or profit, but of a simple truth that both species understood. The measure of a civilization is how it treats those who cannot protect themselves. And by that measure, both humanity and the Velothi had proven themselves worthy of the stars. 18 months had passed since the Guardian Species Declaration, and the Velothi system had been transformed. Where once only forest and pristine moons had orbited the orange star, now Guardian Station hung in space like a steel and crystal monument to interspecies friendship. Commander Zhang Wei stood on the station's observation deck, watching human and Velothi children play together in the low-gravity recreational area. The sight still amazed him, even after months of overseeing the cultural exchange program. Human kids teaching Velothi youngsters to throw balls, while the crystal-furred children showed humans how to sing in harmonies that made the air itself seem to shimmer. "Commander," his communications officer called from the bridge. "We have incoming ships. Multiple contacts bearing 27 Mark IV. Zhang's peaceful moment ended instantly. Identification? Unknown configuration, but the sensor signatures match hegemony destroyer patterns. And sir, there are a lot of them." Zhang hurried to the bridge where his crew was already at their stations. The main screen showed 15 ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Their sleek, predatory designs were unmistakably hegemony, but they were flying alongside ships with different markings. "Analysis, Lieutenant Park?" Zhang asked his intelligence officer. 12 hegemony vessels, 3 syndicate slavers," Lieutenant Park reported. "They are claiming salvage rights to abandoned Crimson Fleet installations on the outer moons." Zhang felt his jaw tighten. The Crimson Fleet bases had been destroyed by Guardian forces months ago, but their remnants provided a convenient legal excuse for anyone wanting to establish a presence in the system. "Send a message to the lead ship," Zhang ordered. "Inform them that this system is under human protection, and they need to state their business." The response came quickly, and the voice that emerged from the speakers was coldly polite. "Guardian Station, this is Hegemony Admiral Krell. We are conducting legitimate salvage operations on abandoned installations. We have filed all proper claims with the Galactic Commerce Authority." Zhang studied the tactical display. The hegemony ships were staying just outside the officially designated protection zone, but their positioning was clearly aggressive. This was a probe, a test to see how seriously humanity took its commitment to the Velothi. "Admiral Krell, you are reminded that this entire system is designated as protected space under human colonial authority. Any military operations require prior approval." "Commander Zhang," Admiral Krell replied, and Zhang was disturbed that the hegemony commander knew his name. "We are not conducting military operations. We are simple salvagers cleaning up the mess left by the criminal organization your forces destroyed." It was a careful game of words. The hegemony was technically within their rights to claim abandoned installations, but everyone knew this was the first step in establishing a permanent presence near the Velothi homeworld. Over the next week, the situation escalated gradually. The hegemony ships began routine patrols that brought them closer and closer to Velothi airspace. Syndicate vessels started mineral surveys on asteroids throughout the system. Each action was technically legal, but the overall pattern was clear. Maya Chen, now 10 years old and fluent in both human and Velothi languages, served as the primary liaison between Guardian Station and the Velothi surface communities. She spent her days traveling between the orbital station and the forest settlements, helping both species understand each other's concerns. "The elders are worried," she reported to Commander Zhang during one of their daily briefings. "They can sense the emotional resonance from the hostile ships. Velothi are very sensitive to aggressive intentions." Brighttail, now considered an adult by Velothi standards but still young at heart, had become Maya's co-ambassador. His understanding of both cultures made him invaluable in bridging communication gaps. "My people do not understand why the bad-feeling ships are allowed to stay," Brighttail said, his crystal fur showing worried blue and gray patterns. "The humans promise to protect us, but the dangerous ones grow bolder each day." Zhang wished he could give them a simple answer, but galactic politics were never simple. "We cannot attack them without provocation. If we fire first, other species will see us as aggressors. We have to wait for them to make the first hostile move." "What if they hurt someone while we wait?" Maya asked, her young face serious beyond her years. Before Zhang could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. "Commander, to the bridge," came the urgent call. "We have a situation." Zhang rushed to the bridge with Maya and Brighttail close behind. The main screen showed a scene that made his blood run cold. Hegemony fighters were strafing a Velothi village, their energy weapons leaving scorched earth where crystal fir gardens had been moments before. "Get me Admiral Krell now," Zhang shouted. The Hegemony Admiral's face appeared on screen, showing no emotion as explosions continued in the background. "Admiral, your fighters are attacking a civilian settlement," Zhang said, struggling to keep his voice level. "Cease fire immediately." "Commander Zhang, there seems to be some confusion," Krell replied calmly. "Our pilots are conducting a navigation exercise. Any damage to surface installations is purely accidental." "That is a civilian village," Maya shouted, stepping forward. "There are children down there." Admiral Krell's cold eyes focused on her. "Ah, the famous human child who started all this trouble. How interesting to finally meet you." On the tactical display, Zhang could see that one of the Hegemony fighters had crashed during the attack. The pilot had ejected safely and was being retrieved by his wingman. "Admiral, one of your pilots crashed during this navigation error," Zhang said carefully. "We are prepared to assist with rescue operations." "That will not be necessary," Krell replied. "However, the Hegemony will require compensation for the loss of military equipment due to hazardous navigation conditions in this system." Zhang felt his hands clench into fists. The Hegemony had just attacked a civilian settlement and was now demanding compensation for their own crashed fighter. It was a provocation designed to test human resolve. "Maya, Brighttail, get to the communication center," Zhang ordered. "I want every news network in human space to see what just happened here." What followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Maya's broadcast, transmitted live from Guardian Station while smoke still rose from the attacked village, went viral across human space within minutes. Standing beside Brighttail, whose crystal fur was dim with grief and fear, Maya spoke directly to the camera in both human standard and musical Velothi. "This is Maya Chen, speaking from Guardian Station," she began, her young voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. 18 months ago, the Velothi people saved my life when pirates attacked our research station. They protected me for 3 months, asking nothing in return except the chance to do what was right." She gestured to Brighttail, who was singing a soft mourning song for the injured Velothi below. "Brighttail is telling you about his cousin, Shimmer of Stars, who was hurt in today's attack. She is only 5 years old in Velothi terms. She was tending the crystal gardens when the ships came." Maya's voice grew stronger as she continued. "The Hegemony calls this a navigation error. They want us to pay them for their crashed fighter. But I have seen what a real navigation error looks like, and this was not one. This was an attack on innocent people who have never hurt anyone." Brighttail added his own words, his improving human speech carrying the musical quality that had become familiar to viewers across human space. "We saved Maya because all children deserve protection," he said. "Now our own children are hurt and the bad ones demand payment for their weapons. Is this the justice of the galaxy? Maya looked directly into the camera, her young face showing determination that reminded viewers of her famous speech to the UN. The Velathi saved me when they had nothing to gain and everything to lose. They kept me safe when scary stories told them that humans were dangerous. If we do not protect them now, if we let bullies hurt them and demand payment for it, what does that say about who we are? She paused, reaching over to touch Brighttail's paw. Brighttail's people taught me that the measure of a person is not how they treat those who can help them, but how they treat those who cannot. The whole galaxy is watching to see what humanity's measure really is. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Recruitment centers across human space were flooded with volunteers requesting assignment to the Guardian fleet. Protest demonstrations erupted on major colony worlds, demanding stronger protection for the Velathi. Corporate leaders who had opposed the Guardian Species Declaration found themselves facing boycotts and public outrage. But the most important response came from Admiral Marcus Thompson, commander of the Guardian fleet, who had been en route to the system with reinforcements when the attack occurred. This is Admiral Thompson to all Guardian fleet vessels. His transmission reached every human ship in the sector. What we witnessed today was not a navigation error. It was a deliberate attack on civilians under our protection. The hegemony has chosen to test our resolve. They will find it unbreakable. 2 years had passed since Maya Chen first spoke to the United Nations, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Guardian Species Declaration had inspired a movement that reached across the stars, touching civilizations that had never heard of Earth or the Velathi. Maya, now 12 years old, stood on the observation deck of the new Interspecies Academy, orbiting Guardian Station. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from dozens of different civilizations docked at the massive facility. Human vessels shared space with the elegant bioships of the Althari Collective, the crystal constructs of the Harmony Singers, and even a few converted Kresh Empire patrol boats. "Hard to believe it all started with you getting lost in a forest," said a voice behind her. Maya turned to see Brighttail approaching, his crystal fur now showing the complex patterns that marked him as a mature adult among his people. At 22 in human years, but still young by Velathi standards, he had become one of the most respected interspecies diplomats in the galaxy. "It did not start with me getting lost," Maya corrected with a smile. "It started with your people choosing to help a scared little girl, even though they had every reason to be afraid of humans." Brighttail's fur shifted to warm gold, the color of happy memories. "And now look what has grown from that one act of kindness." Below them, the Velathi homeworld turned slowly in space, its forests now protected by the most powerful defense network in the galaxy. But the protection extended far beyond military might. The planet had become a symbol of hope for peaceful species throughout the galaxy, proof that the strong could choose to protect the weak rather than exploit them. Maya, Brighttail, called Dr. Elena Vasquez as she approached from the Academy's main corridor. Now in her 50s, she had become the director of the Interspecies Cultural Exchange Program and looked younger than her years, energized by the work she loved. "The hegemony delegation has arrived. Are you ready for the meeting?" Maya felt a familiar flutter of nervousness. The hegemony had requested this meeting, claiming they wanted to discuss new terms of engagement in the region. After their defeat 2 years ago, they had largely avoided human-protected space, but recent intelligence suggested they were planning something significant. "Any word on what they actually want?" Maya asked as they walked toward the main conference chamber. "Admiral Thompson thinks they are testing the waters for some kind of treaty," Dr. Vasquez replied. The defeat at Velathi really shook their confidence. Losing face in front of the entire galaxy is not something the hegemony takes lightly. The conference chamber was a marvel of interspecies cooperation. The room had been designed to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes, environments, and sensory needs. Atmospheric zones could be adjusted for different breathing requirements, gravity fields could be modified, and translation systems provided real-time communication in over 300 languages. Already seated around the massive circular table were representatives from the Alliance of Protected Worlds, as the growing coalition had come to be known. The Althari Collective's ambassador, a graceful being that looked like a living tree with silver leaves, rustled softly in what Maya had learned was their equivalent of a greeting. The Harmony Singers, crystalline beings similar to the Velathi but from a different evolutionary path, chimed soft musical notes of welcome. Admiral Thompson entered with the human delegation, his expression carefully neutral. The years since the Velothi incident had transformed him from a career military officer into one of the galaxy's most respected peacekeepers. His presence alone was often enough to deter aggression. Before the hegemony delegation arrives, Admiral Thompson said, taking his seat, I want everyone to understand the stakes. Our intelligence suggests that they are facing internal pressure from their own people. The defeat here showed other hegemony species that their military is not invincible. Several member worlds are questioning their continued membership. Brighttail's fur shifted to deep blue, the color of serious thought. Do they come seeking peace, or is this another test? With the hegemony, it is always both, Admiral Thompson replied grimly. The chamber's main doors opened and the hegemony delegation entered. Leading them was Admiral Krell, the same commander who had ordered the attack on the Velothi village 2 years ago. His face showed no emotion, but Maya could sense the tension in his posture. Behind Krell came representatives from several hegemony member species, including some Maya recognized from intelligence briefings. The diversity was striking. The hegemony ruled through force rather than cooperation, but they were still a coalition of different worlds and peoples. Admiral Thompson, Krell said as he took his seat across the table, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. The Hegemony Council has authorized me to discuss new arrangements for this sector. Admiral Krell, Thompson replied evenly, we are always willing to discuss peace. But let me be clear, the protection of our allied species is not negotiable. Krell's eyes swept around the table, taking in the assembled representatives. When his gaze fell on Maya and Brighttail, his expression hardened slightly. Ah yes, the famous child ambassador and her pet alien, he said with barely concealed disdain. Still playing at diplomacy, I see. Maya felt anger flare in her chest, but Brighttail's gentle touch on her arm calmed her. His fur showed steady silver and gold, the colors of patience and wisdom. Admiral Krell, Maya said, her voice calm and clear. Brighttail is not my pet. He is my partner, my friend, and one of the wisest beings I have ever known. Your inability to see that says more about you than it does about him. Several of the hegemony delegates shifted uncomfortably at Maya's direct response. Krell's face flushed with anger, but before he could respond, another voice spoke from the hegemony delegation. The young ambassador speaks truly, said a being Maya had not expected to see. It was a Velothi, but one she did not recognize. The crystal fur was darker than any she had seen before, with patterns that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. I am Shadow of Sorrow, the dark Velothi continued in the musical language of his people, which the translation system rendered in standard galactic speech. I represent the Velothi who chose a different path than those who protected the human child. Maya and Brighttail stared in shock. They had never heard of any Velothi leaving their homeworld, much less joining the hegemony. You are Velothi, Brighttail said in their native language, his fur showing confused patterns of blue and gray. How can you serve those who attacked our people? Shadow of Sorrow's dark fur shifted in patterns Maya had never seen before. Because I learned that kindness is weakness, young cousin. The humans you trust so much will abandon you the moment it becomes inconvenient. Better to serve strength than to trust in false promises. The chamber fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. The hegemony had not just come to negotiate. They had come to drive a wedge between the alliance by showing that even the Velothi could be turned against their human protectors. How many? Admiral Thompson asked quietly. Several hundred, Krell replied with satisfaction. It seems that not all Velothi share the naive trust your pet species places in humanity. Some of them understand the true nature of galactic politics. Maya felt her heart breaking. The idea that any Velothi could turn against their own people, against the alliance that had grown from their act of kindness, was almost too painful to bear. But then Brighttail did something unexpected. He began to sing. It was not the gentle harmony that Maya was used to hearing from her friend. This was the deep, complex song that Velothi elders used for the most serious occasions. His crystal fur blazed with silver and gold as his voice filled the chamber with haunting melodies that seemed to reach into everyone's souls. When the song ended, Shadow of Sorrow's dark fur was showing flickers of other colors, brief touches of silver and blue that he quickly suppressed. What did you sing? Maya asked softly. The song of the lost pod, Brighttail replied, his own voice heavy with sadness. It is sung for family members who have forgotten who they are. It reminds them that there is always a path home. Shadow of Sorrow stood abruptly, his dark fur now showing clear patterns of conflict and pain. Your songs cannot change reality, cousin. The hegemony offers protection based on strength. Humanity offers protection based on sentiment. Which do you think will last longer? Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Admiral Thompson's communication device crackled to life. Admiral, we have multiple hyperspace signatures incoming. It is a big one. The largest hegemony fleet we have ever detected. Krell smiled coldly. It seems the rest of our delegation has arrived. 57 ships, Admiral Thompson. The largest battle fleet the hegemony has assembled in recent years. We thought it was time to settle the question of who really controls this sector. Maya felt fear grip her heart, but Admiral Thompson's expression remained calm. Admiral Krell, you are making a serious mistake, Thompson said quietly. This station is home to representatives from over 30 species. An attack here would be an act of war against the entire Alliance. The Alliance, Krell laughed. A collection of weak species hiding behind human protection. When your Guardian fleet is destroyed, they will quickly remember the wisdom of serving the strong. But as the hegemony fleet took position around the system, something unexpected happened. Ships began dropping out of hyperspace from every direction. Not human ships, but vessels from every member of the Alliance of Protected Worlds. The Althari Collective's bioships, grown rather than built, moved with organic grace as they formed defensive formations. The crystal ships of the Harmony Singers chimed with frequencies that could disrupt enemy targeting systems. Even the peaceful agricultural worlds had sent what ships they could spare. You seem to have miscalculated, Admiral Krell, Thompson said as the tactical display showed over 200 Allied vessels taking defensive positions. The Alliance is not a collection of weak species hiding behind human protection. It is a family that protects each other. Maya watched in amazement as species that had never fought before coordinated their efforts with the precision of lifelong allies. The Velothi might not have warships, but their crystal technology enhanced the sensors and communications of every allied vessel. The Althari's bioships could regenerate damage that would cripple traditional craft. The Harmony Singer's frequency weapons could disable electronics without harming organic life. This changes nothing, Krell said, but Maya could hear uncertainty in his voice. The hegemony fleet is still superior in pure firepower. Perhaps, Admiral Thompson replied. But they are fighting for conquest. We are fighting for family. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. It was not just humans defending the Velothi, but dozens of species fighting together to protect the principles that had brought them together. Maya and Brighttail watched from the Academy's command center as the engagement unfolded. The hegemony fleet was indeed powerful, but they had not expected to face such unified resistance. Their tactics were designed for intimidating individual worlds, not fighting a coordinated alliance. The turning point came when Admiral Thompson made a decision that military historians would debate for generations. Instead of focusing on destroying the hegemony fleet, he ordered his ships to target their engines and weapons, attempting to disable rather than destroy. Admiral, his tactical officer protested, we could end this faster with full power attacks. No, Thompson replied firmly. We are not here to prove we can kill more efficiently than they can. We are here to prove that there is a better way. The strategy worked. Faced with an enemy that was clearly capable of destroying them, but chose restraint instead, many hegemony ships began to surrender rather than fight to the death. The psychological impact was devastating. The hegemony's entire philosophy was based on the belief that strength meant the willingness to use overwhelming force. When Admiral Krell's flagship was finally disabled, the remaining hegemony ships found themselves surrounded but not destroyed. Thompson opened communications with the entire enemy fleet. Hegemony forces, this is Admiral Thompson. Your fleet is defeated, but you are not destroyed. That was a choice we made. You came here believing that strength means the willingness to kill. We have shown you that true strength means the wisdom to protect. The response came not from Krell, but from one of the other hegemony commanders. Admiral Thompson, this is Commander Vex of the 2nd Squadron. We did not expect such restraint from an enemy with clear tactical superiority. Why do you not finish us? Thompson's reply was broadcast throughout the system, reaching not just the defeated hegemony fleet but every ship in the Alliance. Because, Commander Vex, we remember what brought us all here. A little girl was saved by beings who had every reason to fear her species, but chose kindness instead. They taught us that the measure of a civilization is not how efficiently it can destroy its enemies, but how wisely it can turn enemies into friends. In the Interspecies Academy's command center, Maya felt tears streaming down her face. Shadow of Sorrow, the dark Velothi who had joined the hegemony, was staring at the tactical display with his fur showing patterns of amazement and confusion. "I do not understand," he said in the musical Velothi language. "The humans have won completely. Why do they not take revenge for the attack on our villages?" Brighttail's response was gentle but firm. "Because that is not who they are, Lost Cousin. They learned from us what we learned from our ancestors, that the cycle of violence only ends when someone chooses to be stronger than their anger." Over the following days, the aftermath of the battle sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The hegemony's crushing defeat had not come from superior weapons or tactics, but from a fundamental difference in philosophy. Species across the galaxy began to question whether rule through fear was really the most effective form of government. The most significant moment came when Commander Vex formally requested asylum for his entire squadron. 47 ships and over 10,000 personnel chose to defect from the hegemony, rather than return to a system based on oppression. "Why?" Maya asked Vex during his debriefing. "You were loyal to the hegemony for over 20 years. What changed?" The grizzled commander, a reptilian being from a world that had been conquered by the hegemony decades earlier, considered his words carefully. "Young ambassador, I have spent my career believing that fear and strength were the same thing. Today I learned the difference. Your Admiral Thompson had the power to destroy my fleet completely, but he chose mercy instead. That is a kind of strength I never knew existed." He paused, looking out at the Velothi homeworld visible through the station's windows. "My own people were conquered by the hegemony when I was your age. I told myself that serving them was the only way to protect my family. But watching how the Alliance fought today, I realized that I had been protecting them from the wrong enemy. The real enemy was not external threats, but the system that made me believe I had no choice but to serve oppression." Word of the hegemony's defeat and the mass defections reached every corner of the galaxy within days. On dozens of worlds, peaceful species began to organize and resist their oppressors. The Alliance of Protected Worlds received hundreds of requests for membership from civilizations that had previously been too afraid to stand up for themselves. But the most important change came from within the hegemony itself. Shadow of Sorrow approached Maya and Brighttail 3 days after the battle, his dark crystal fur now showing clear patterns of silver and blue. "Lost cousin," Brighttail said gently, using the formal Velothi greeting for family members who had been separated. "You seem troubled." "I have been thinking about the Song of the Lost Pod that you sang," Shadow of Sorrow replied, his musical voice carrying notes of uncertainty and hope. "I told myself that I joined the hegemony to be realistic about galactic politics. But watching the battle, seeing how the Alliance fought together to protect each other, I think perhaps I was the one who did not understand reality." Maya stepped forward, her young face showing compassion beyond her years. "What reality is that?" "That kindness is not weakness," Shadow of Sorrow said, his fur now blazing with silver and gold. "That protection does not require domination. That a family built on love is stronger than an empire built on fear." He paused, looking directly at Maya. "You were just a frightened child when my cousins found you in the forest, but you taught them something that changed the galaxy. You taught them that strangers can become family, that differences in species do not matter if hearts are pure." "The Velothi taught me that," Maya replied. "I was just scared and lost. They were the ones who chose to help. And now their choice has given hope to billions of beings across the galaxy," Shadow of Sorrow said. "Worlds that thought they had no choice but to accept oppression now know that there is another way. Species that thought they were too weak to stand up for themselves have learned that they do not have to stand alone." 6 months later, Maya stood in the same observation deck where her conversation with Brighttail had begun this chapter. But now the view was dramatically different. The orbital space around the Velothi homeworld was filled with ships from over 100 different species, all members of the Alliance of Protected Worlds. The Academy had expanded to accommodate students from dozens of civilizations, all learning the principles that had started with one small act of kindness in a forest clearing. Human children played alongside young Velothi, Althari saplings, crystalline harmony singer juveniles, and dozens of other species. Look at what has grown from your decision to help a lost child, Maya said to Shimmer of Dawn, who had come to visit the academy for the first time. The ancient Velathi elder, now bearing the title of Alliance Elder in recognition of her role in starting the movement, looked out at the bustling space station with fur that glowed with contentment. "Small bright spirit," she said in her ancient voice. "When we found you crying in our forest, we could not have imagined this. We only knew that you needed help, and helping you was the right thing to do." "But it was more than that," Maya replied. "You showed the galaxy that there was a different way to live, that the strong could protect the weak instead of exploiting them, that kindness could be a source of strength instead of vulnerability." Brighttail approached with a group of young beings from various species, the first graduating class of the Interspecies Academy. They were about to embark on their mission as ambassadors and peacekeepers, carrying the Alliance's message of hope to worlds throughout the galaxy. "Maya," Brighttail said, his mature fur showing the complex patterns that marked him as one of the most respected diplomats in the galaxy, "the Council has made a decision about the Kresh Empire's request." The Kresh Empire, one of the galaxy's most aggressive militaristic powers, had shocked everyone by requesting Alliance protection after a civil war broke out on their homeworld. The irony was not lost on anyone. The species that had once threatened to conquer the Alliance was now asking for its help. "What did they decide?" Maya asked. "The Alliance will send peacekeeping forces to help stabilize the Kresh homeworld," Brighttail replied, "but only if they agree to adopt Alliance principles, protection of civilians, respect for all sentient life, and the commitment to use strength in service of justice rather than conquest." Maya smiled. "And if they refuse? Then they will face their civil war alone," Shimmer of Dawn said simply. "The Alliance does not force its values on others, but it also does not help those who refuse to abandon the ways that create suffering." As evening fell over the Velathi homeworld, Maya joined the traditional ceremony that marked the end of each day at the academy. Students and faculty from dozens of species gathered in the main assembly hall, which had been designed to accommodate the needs of all Alliance members. The ceremony always began the same way, with the Song of Remembrance, sung in the musical Velathi language but translated for all to understand. It told the story of a small human child lost in an alien forest and the decision of 6 crystal-furred beings to offer help to a stranger. But tonight, something special happened. As the song reached its conclusion, Shadow of Sorrow stepped forward to add a new verse, the first addition to the Song of Remembrance in over a year. His voice, now clear and bright instead of the dark tones he had used as a hegemony agent, sang of redemption and return. He sang of how even those who had lost their way could find the path home if they remembered the simple truth that had started it all, that protecting others is the highest calling of any sentient being. When the ceremony ended, Maya found herself standing once again on the observation deck, where so many important moments had taken place. This time, she was joined not just by Brighttail, but by young representatives from over 30 different species. "Do you think we have really changed anything?" asked Cathara, a young Althari whose silver leaves rustled with curiosity. "The galaxy is still full of conflict and suffering." Maya looked out at the stars where she knew Alliance ships were patrolling trade routes, protecting merchant vessels from pirates, where diplomatic missions were helping resolve conflicts that might once have led to wars, where refugee ships were carrying survivors from oppressed worlds to new homes in Alliance space. "I think," Maya said carefully, "that we have proven that change is possible. We have shown that there is an alternative to the old ways of doing things. Whether the galaxy chooses to follow our example, that is up to everyone else." Brighttail's fur shifted to the warm gold and pink that meant family love as he looked around at the assembled young beings. "But we have also created something that cannot be destroyed," he added. "We have created a generation that knows it is possible for different species to live as family. Whatever challenges come next, they will face them with that knowledge." As the young ambassadors dispersed to their quarters, Maya remained on the observation deck with Brighttail and Shimmer of Dawn. Tomorrow she would begin her final year at the academy, before taking on full diplomatic responsibilities. There were rumors of new threats emerging in distant sectors, species that had not yet learned the lessons of the Alliance. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Shimmer of Dawn asked in the gentle voice that had comforted Maya through so many difficult moments. Maya thought about all that had happened since that day in the forest when she was 7 years old. She thought about the friends she had made, the species she had helped bring together, the conflicts she had helped resolve. I do not know if anyone can ever be ready for the future, she replied honestly. But I know that whatever comes, we will face it together. That is what family does. Brighttail's fur blazed with silver and gold as he added his own thoughts. The galaxy is large and full of beings who have not yet learned that kindness is strength, he said. But every day more species join the alliance. Every day more children grow up knowing that differences in biology do not matter if hearts are pure. The song that began in our forest is spreading to every corner of the galaxy. As they stood together looking out at the stars, Maya realized that her story was really just beginning. The little girl who had been saved by crystal-furred forest dwellers had become a bridge between worlds, but there were still countless worlds that needed bridges. The Alliance of Protected Worlds had grown from a simple act of kindness into the largest peaceful coalition in galactic history. But more importantly, it had proven that there was an alternative to the cycles of conquest and oppression that had dominated galactic politics for millennia. The hegemony still existed, weakened but not destroyed. There were still pirates and slavers, still species that believed might made right. But now there was also proof that another way was possible. There was an example of what could be achieved when the strong chose to protect the weak, when different species chose to see each other as family rather than competitors. Maya fell asleep that night to the sound of Brighttail's gentle breathing and the distant songs of the Velothi forest. But now those songs were joined by the harmonies of dozens of other species, all adding their voices to the growing chorus of hope that had begun with 6 beings choosing to help a lost child. The galaxy was still vast and dangerous, still full of conflicts and challenges, but it was also full of friends who had not yet met, families waiting to be formed, and children of all species who would grow up knowing that the universe was a place where kindness could triumph over cruelty. And in a small way, it had all started because a frightened little human girl had run into a forest and the beings who found her had chosen love over fear. The Alliance of Protected Worlds continued to grow, one act of kindness at a time, proving that the smallest gestures could change the destiny of entire civilizations. Maya Chen and Brighttail had become symbols of that change, but they knew they were just the beginning. The real heroes were every being who chose to help instead of harm, who chose to protect instead of exploit, who chose to build bridges instead of walls. They were the ones who would carry the message of the Alliance to every corner of the galaxy, one world at a time, until every child of every species could grow up safe and loved. That was the true legacy of the Guardian Species Declaration. Not just the protection of the Velothi, but the proof that protection itself could become a form of strength that no weapon could match. Dr. Alan Carter stared at the aliens sitting across from him in Earth's first interstellar embassy. The 3 Zithrians looked uncomfortable in the room's conditions, despite their environmental suits. Their breathing masks made soft hissing sounds with each breath. "You want to do what?" Alan asked, certain he had misheard. The lead Zithrian, Vila, adjusted her translator. "We wish to establish a wilderness experience resort on Earth. Our market. Research indicates substantial interest among wealthy citizens across the galaxy." Alan rubbed his temples. 6 months ago, humanity had made first contact. 3 months ago, they learned Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world in galactic records. Now aliens wanted to turn it into a tourist trap. "I don't understand," Alan said. "Your people need protective suits just to sit in this room. Why would anyone want to vacation here?" Vila's compound eyes blinked, and what Alan had learned was excitement. Precisely what humans consider normal represents the ultimate adventure for species from gentler worlds. Your variable weather, high gravity, dangerous wildlife, and microbe-rich environment. It's the most extreme experience imaginable. The second Zithrian, a financial officer named Drex, added, "Citizens will pay enormous sums for guided experiences on a Class 12 world. We project first-year revenues exceeding 50 million galactic credits." Alan looked down at his notes. As Earth's leading exobiologist, he understood the science behind their classification. Compared to most inhabited worlds, Earth was a nightmare. Higher oxygen levels, stronger gravity, extreme temperature variations, aggressive microorganisms, and unpredictable weather patterns. What humans considered a pleasant spring day could kill most galactic citizens without protection. This seems dangerous, Alan said. For your people, I mean. All experiences would be conducted with appropriate safety measures, the third Zithrian, a safety engineer named Mott, assured him. Controlled environments, emergency medical facilities, and graduated exposure protocols. Alan wasn't convinced. I'll need to discuss this with the International Space Agency. As the meeting ended, Alan's communication device buzzed. The message from ISA Director Wu was brief. Call immediately regarding Yellowstone incident. Susan Wells had been a park ranger at Yellowstone National Park for 8 years. She loved the wilderness, the animals, and even the unpredictable geysers. What she didn't love were rule breakers, especially ones that weren't human. She crouched beside a strange metal device partially hidden among pine needles near Old Faithful. It was the third such device she'd found this week. Small, cylindrical, with blinking lights and what appeared to be collection vials. Definitely not approved research equipment. Susan's radio crackled. Ranger Wells, we have reports of unusual activity near Prismatic Spring. Possible unauthorized person. 20 minutes? Later, Susan parked her vehicle and hiked toward the famous colorful hot spring. The tourist paths were closed for the season, making the unauthorized visitor easy to spot, especially since he wasn't human. The figure wore what looked like a spacesuit, but lighter and more flexible than anything NASA had developed. It was collecting water samples from the edge of the spring, the steaming, mineral-rich water flowing into sealed containers. "Excuse me," Susan called out, approaching cautiously. "This area is restricted. I need to see your research permit." The figure startled, nearly falling into the scalding water. It turned, and Susan found herself looking at her first alien face to face. Through a clear helmet, she could see a being with blue-tinted skin and large compound eyes like an insect's. "You're not supposed to be here," Susan said, recovering from her shock. "All extraterrestrial research requires permits and human supervision." The alien spoke, a device on its suit translating. "Apologies. I am Krill, advanced scout for Zithrian expeditions. Simple environmental sampling for resort development." "Resort development in Yellowstone?" Susan's voice rose. "This is a protected national park." "Not this specific location," Krill clarified. "Using samples to calibrate safety systems for proposed tourism facility." Before Susan could respond, Krill made a strange gasping sound. The alien dropped to its knees, breathing heavily. "Are you okay?" Susan rushed forward. "Suit breach." Krill wheezed. "Microbes. Can't." The alien collapsed. Susan immediately radioed for emergency help, then checked the suit. There was a tiny tear near the wrist, barely visible. Such a small hole, yet the alien was in serious distress. As she waited for help, Susan realized with growing horror what this meant. If a microscopic tear could cause such a severe reaction, Earth was far more dangerous to aliens than she had imagined. The very air they breathed could be deadly. 3 hours later, Alan Carter rushed through the doors of the newly established Xenobiology Wing at Yellowstone Medical Center. Director Wu and 2 security officers met him in the hallway. "What happened?" Alan asked. "Zithrian scout exposed to unfiltered Earth environment," Wu explained. "Apparently collecting samples without proper protocols." Through a window, Alan could see medical staff working on the unconscious alien. They had the Zithrian in a sealed chamber, administering what he assumed were broad-spectrum antibiotics and antivirals. "Will it survive?" Alan asked. "Too early to tell. The amount of exposure was minimal, but these beings have no evolutionary defenses against Earth microbes." A park ranger approached them. She was tall, with sun-weathered skin and a serious expression. "Dr. Carter, I'm Susan Wells. I found the alien." Alan shook her hand. "Can you tell me exactly what happened?" As Susan described the encounter, Alan's concerns grew. If a tiny suit breach could nearly kill a Zithrian, how could they possibly operate a tourist resort safely? Director Wu seemed to read his thoughts. "The International Space Agency has made a decision. This incident highlights the dangers, but also the opportunity. The Galactic Council is watching how we handle this. If Earth is going to join galactic society, we need to demonstrate responsibility. What does that mean? Susan asked. It means, Wu said, looking at both of them, that you two are now the official human liaisons to the Zithrian Tourism Project. What? They said in unison. Dr. Carter, you understand the biology. Ranger Wells, you understand practical wilderness management. Together you'll ensure this project proceeds safely, or you'll shut it down. Alan looked through the window at the struggling alien, then at the determined park ranger beside him. Neither of them had signed up for this. When do we start, he asked. You already have, Wu replied. Welcome to galactic diplomacy. 6 months passed quickly. In a remote area of Wyoming, far from major cities, the Terran Experience Resort took shape. The main complex resembled a giant glass dome surrounded by smaller bubbles connected by enclosed walkways. Construction. Crews worked day and night, with human workers handling the outdoor tasks while alien engineers managed the climate controls from protected environments. Alan Carter stood beside Vila, watching a team install the final section of the main dome. His role as human liaison had evolved into something between diplomat, safety inspector, and reluctant tour guide. The containment systems are impressive, Alan admitted. Triple redundant air filtration, radiation shields, gravity adjusters. Vila nodded, her environmental suit much sleeker than the bulky prototype she'd worn during their first meeting. Necessary precautions. Your world is beautiful but hostile. Alan suppressed a smile. What humans called a nice spring day required extensive protective measures for visitors from more gentle worlds. Earth's extreme features included oxygen-rich atmosphere, high gravity, broad temperature variations, unpredictable precipitation, and countless microorganisms. The resort opens in 2 weeks, Vila said. We should review the emergency protocols again. Alan checked his tablet. Susan's team is conducting a drill right now. On the other side of the compound, Susan Wells watched her trainee guides scramble into action. The alarm had sounded, signaling a simulated containment breach. Men and women in bright orange guide jackets rushed to their stations, carrying emergency breather masks and portable shield generators. 90 seconds, Susan called out, checking her stopwatch. Too slow. In a real breach, visitors would be experiencing respiratory distress after 30 seconds of exposure. The trainees looked exhausted. Most were former park rangers, wilderness experts, and emergency responders. For the past month, Susan had trained them relentlessly on alien physiology and emergency response. Again, she ordered. And remember, you need to reach visitors in the Rainforest Dome and the Alpine Experience. As they reset, a young guide named Peter approached her. The Prolaxian ambassador is here for his preview tour. Dr. Carter asked if you could handle it. Susan sighed. More diplomatic babysitting. Tell the team to continue drilling. I want those response times under 60 seconds by end of day. The Prolaxian ambassador resembled a tall, slender humanoid with silvery skin that reflected light, like polished metal. His environmental suit was clearly custom-made, more fashion statement than protective equipment. Ambassador Noor, welcome to Terran Experience, Susan said, extending the traditional Prolaxian greeting, right palm flat, left hand curved. Ranger Wells, the ambassador responded. I've heard much about your involvement. You are something of a celebrity among my people after rescuing Scout Krill. Susan felt uncomfortable with the praise. The young Zithrian scout had recovered from his exposure, though not without lingering health issues. His incident had become a cautionary tale in training materials. I'd like to show you our controlled environments, Susan said, leading the ambassador through the main reception area. We've created 7 distinct Earth biomes, each with graduated exposure protocols. The ambassador's eyes widened as they entered the first dome, a temperate forest with actual Earth trees growing under filtered sunlight. Special walkways kept visitors safely above the soil. Remarkable, he said. On my world, such diverse plant life would be impossible without extensive genetic engineering. Each environment offers different experiences, Susan explained. Visitors can observe real Earth weather through protective shields, touch filtered samples of soil and water, and even experience modified versions of our seasons. They continued through desert, mountain, and ocean simulations, each more impressive than the last. The rainforest dome featured a controlled rainstorm every 3 hours, with visitors watching from observation decks. And this, Susan said as they entered the final dome, is our most popular feature. The ambassador gasped. Above them, only a transparent barrier separated visitors from the open Wyoming sky. Clouds drifted past, unfiltered sunlight streaming down. The immersion experience, Susan explained. Visitors in full protective gear can stand under actual Earth sky. The barrier maintains ideal pressure and filters harmful radiation, but otherwise provides the closest possible experience to standing on Earth's surface. The ambassador moved closer to the transparent ceiling. Extraordinary, may I? We've prepared a special demonstration, Susan said, motioning toward a sealed doorway where technicians waited with equipment. A brief, supervised exposure to filtered rain. The ambassador's excitement was visible even through his suit. I'd be honored. Alan monitored the ambassador's vital signs from the control room. The test had been carefully planned. 10 seconds of extremely diluted rainwater on the ambassador's suited hand. Even with multiple safeguards, Alan felt nervous. Through the cameras, he watched the demonstration begin. The ambassador extended his gloved hand into a sealed chamber. A small valve opened, releasing several drops of filtered rainwater onto the protective material. The ambassador watched in fascination. Then, without warning, he pressed a release on his suit, exposing his actual skin to the water. Alarms blared. Susan reacted instantly, slapping the emergency shutdown and pulling the ambassador's arm back while technicians rushed forward with neutralizing spray. "What were you thinking?" she demanded, as medical staff surrounded them. The ambassador's silver skin had already developed angry red blisters where the water had touched. Yet, remarkably, he seemed thrilled rather than concerned. Extraordinary sensation, like fire, but more intense. Alan arrived, breathing hard from running. The medical team says he'll recover. Minor chemical burns from what our scientists call slightly acidic rain. Perfectly normal for Earth, but apparently caustic to Pralaxian physiology. Susan shook her head in disbelief. He removed his protection deliberately. And he wants to come back, Alan added. Apparently the experience was transcendent. Later that evening, Susan and Alan sat in the empty staff cafeteria, reviewing the incident report. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" Susan asked. Alan nodded. The ambassador's already shared his experience on galactic social networks. Advance bookings have doubled. Susan looked out the window at the Wyoming sunset. They have no idea what they're getting into. No, Alan agreed. But they're willing to pay a fortune to find out. Outside, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The weather forecast predicted thunderstorms by morning. Just another normal day on Earth, and an extreme adventure for their soon-to-arrive guests. 3 months after opening, Terran Experience had become the most exclusive destination in the galaxy. Aliens from 17 different species had paid fortunes to visit Earth, the notorious Class 12 Death World. The resort operated at full capacity, with bookings scheduled 2 years in advance. Alan sat in his office reviewing the latest visitor statistics. The most popular attractions surprised him. Standing in actual precipitation had a 6-week waiting list. Diurnal temperature fluctuation. Experience received rave reviews across galactic social networks. Even unfiltered atmospheric sampling, essentially just breathing slightly filtered Earth air, earned record satisfaction ratings. His door slid open, and Susan entered. Her ranger uniform had been replaced with the resort's official guide outfit, though she'd refused to wear the ridiculous Earth expert cap that marketing had designed. "I need to talk to you about the new Predator Encounter exhibit," she said without greeting. Alan sighed. "The safety team approved it yesterday." "That's because the safety team hasn't spent 20 years dealing with actual bears," Susan replied. "The observation distances are too close." The protective barriers are rated for impacts 10 times stronger than anything Earth wildlife can generate. It's not about the barriers, Susan insisted. It's about the psychological impact. A wolf pack hunting or a grizzly standing on its hind legs looks harmless to us. To most aliens, it's nightmare fuel. We had 3 panic attacks last week, just from visitors seeing eagles swoop down on fish. Before Alan could respond, his communication device chimed with a priority message. We'll continue this later. The Galactic Senator has arrived for his VIP tour. Senator Drax of the Unified Worlds was the most influential visitor yet to grace Terran experience. As head of the Commerce Committee, his opinion could make or break Earth's growing tourism industry. His entourage included family members, advisors, and security staff, 22 visitors in total. Alan and Vila greeted them in the VIP reception dome. The senator was tall even for a Krylaxian, with the characteristic crystalline exoskeleton that sparkled under the lights. Welcome to Earth, Senator, Alan said, offering the traditional greeting. We're honored by your presence. Dr. Carter, the senator replied. I've heard fascinating reports about this facility. My grandchildren insisted we experience it firsthand. 2 smaller Krylaxians peeked out from behind the senator. Their exoskeletons were softer, not yet fully developed. We've prepared a special itinerary, Vila explained. Beginning with our most popular attractions, followed by the new wilderness immersion experience. Excellent, the senator said. We're particularly interested in your weather phenomenon demonstrations. Is it true you can make water fall from above? Alan smiled. We call it rain, Senator. And yes, you'll experience it today. Susan led the second half of the senator's tour. She'd been assigned to guide them through the wilderness dome, where visitors could observe actual Earth ecosystems from elevated walkways. Below, a carefully managed forest contained controlled populations of small animals and birds. This environment represents a typical North American temperate forest, she explained to the group. The plants you see are called trees, and they convert your carbon dioxide waste into oxygen. The alien visitors watched in fascination. For beings from worlds with engineered environments and carefully managed ecosystems, Earth's biological diversity was mind-boggling. Are those organisms dangerous? Asked one of the senator's aides, pointing to a family of rabbits. Those are herbivores, Susan explained. They eat only plants and pose no threat. The tour continued to the observation platform overlooking a small pond. Susan was explaining the water cycle when she felt a slight vibration beneath her feet. First, she thought it was just another group on a nearby walkway. Then the vibration intensified. Warning lights flashed. What's happening? The senator demanded. Minor seismic activity, Susan said calmly, though her heart raced. What we call an earthquake. It's perfectly normal for Earth. The visitors began to panic as the shaking continued. To humans, it would barely register as a tremor. But to species from geologically stable worlds, it was terrifying. Please remain calm, Susan instructed. Our facility is designed to... A loud crack interrupted her. One of the support beams for the observation platform had shifted slightly. The safety system activated, shields deploying around the visitors. Then, the lights went out. In the control center, Alan watched with growing horror as emergency alerts flooded the screens. The earthquake, barely magnitude 3.5, had somehow damaged the primary containment systems. Backup generators kicked in, but 3 sections of the facility reported integrity breaches. Status report, he demanded. A technician responded. Minor structural damage in sections 5, 8, and 12. Environmental contamination in the wilderness dome. 17 visitors exposed to unfiltered conditions. Deployment emergency response teams, Alan ordered. Priority to the senator's group. On the monitors, he could see Susan already leading emergency procedures. She had the visitors in emergency bubbles administering oxygen supplements. Alan activated the facility-wide communication system. Attention all staff, this is not a drill. Implement Protocol 7 immediately. Protocol 7, full evacuation of all visitors to orbital facilities. It was the resort's most extreme measure, never before used. 6 hours later, Susan sat beside Alan in the emergency command center. The facility had been evacuated. 17 aliens were being treated for exposure to Earth's environment, including 3 members of the Senator's party. "How bad is it?" Susan asked. "Bad," Alan replied. The Senator's youngest grandchild developed a severe allergic reaction to oak pollen. Nothing life-threatening, but it will leave permanent scars on their exoskeleton. The others? Various reactions to Earth bacteria, fungi, and atmospheric components. All stable, but the Galactic Senate is calling for an immediate investigation. Vila entered, looking exhausted. The preliminary reports are already circulating. On galactic networks, they're calling Earth too deadly for tourism. "It was just a minor earthquake," Susan protested. "That's not all," Alan said grimly. Medical scans of the returning tourists found Earth microorganisms in their systems. Despite decontamination protocols, they transported bacteria back to their ships. Susan's eyes widened. "You mean?" "Yes," Alan confirmed. "The Galactic Health Authority is concerned about potential cross-species contamination. They're talking about quarantine." "For the affected tourists?" Susan asked. "No," Alan said quietly. "For all of Earth." Outside, through the reinforced windows, they could see the Wyoming sunset painting the sky in brilliant orange and pink. To humans, it was a beautiful end to a difficult day. To the galaxy, it might be the last glimpse of a world too dangerous to visit. 1 week after the earthquake, Alan sat across from 5 Galactic Senate representatives in the orbital station above Earth. The hearing had lasted for 3 days. Medical experts, safety engineers, and tourism officials had all testified about the incident at Terran Experience. Now it was Alan's turn to speak. Earth's future in galactic society might depend on what he said next. "Distinguished representatives," Alan began, "I won't minimize what happened. 17 visitors experienced unfiltered Earth conditions. All suffered reactions, though none fatal. However, I believe closing Earth to the galaxy would be a mistake." The lead representative, an elegant being named Zorus with flowing tentacles and eyes that changed color with emotion, leaned forward. "Dr. Carter, the medical evidence is clear. Earth microorganisms were found on 3 different ships. Had they reached populated worlds, the contamination could have been catastrophic." "I understand," Alan replied. "But I propose a solution that addresses these concerns while preserving Earth's relationship with the galactic community." He activated a display showing new facility designs. "Instead of fighting Earth's classification as a death world, we should embrace it. I suggest transforming the resort into the Earth Adaptation Institute, part research station, part controlled experience center," the representatives murmured among themselves. "The incident proved something important," Alan continued. "Our current approach, trying to shield visitors entirely from Earth's environment, is flawed. One minor breach and disaster strikes. Instead, we should focus on graduated adaptation." "You propose deliberately exposing visitors to Earth conditions?" asked another representative, his crystalline form glittering with apparent alarm. "In careful, scientifically monitored stages," Alan clarified, "with comprehensive training and medical support." The representatives looked unconvinced. "Before you decide," Alan said, "I invite you to experience something." Susan waited nervously at the trailhead. When Alan had called with his desperate plan, she'd thought he was joking. Now, watching the shuttle land and 5 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy emerge, she realized he was entirely serious. "Ranger Wells," Zorus greeted her. "We understand you've prepared a demonstration." Susan nodded. "A short hike through Wyoming wilderness. Unfiltered, unmodified Earth environment." The representatives looked at the protective gear Susan offered them, simple breathing masks and light clothing, nothing like their usual environmental suits. "This seems inadequate," one said. "It's what humans use in slightly challenging conditions," Susan explained. "The masks filter pollen but allow you to experience Earth air in diluted form." The representatives were reluctant, but diplomatic protocol made it difficult to refuse. They donned the minimal gear and followed Susan onto the trail. The hike lasted only 30 minutes, but it changed everything. Susan led the representatives through a forest across a small stream and to a meadow overlooking the mountains. She showed them wildflowers, helped them touch tree bark, and let them listen to birdsong without electronic filters. They were nervous at first, constantly checking their medical monitors. But gradually, something changed. They began to ask questions, to look around with genuine interest rather than fear. When a light rain began to fall, Susan expected panic. Instead, the representatives extended their hands, feeling the drops with expressions of wonder. "How do you live with such intensity?" Zoris asked, watching water beat on her skin without causing harm. "We were born to it," Susan explained. "Earth shaped us just as your world shaped you." Back at the shuttle, Alan waited with a medical team. The representatives underwent decontamination, but their medical scans showed something unexpected. "Your immune responses are already adapting," the doctor explained. "Brief controlled exposure has triggered cellular level changes. With continued graduated exposure, you could develop significant resistance to Earth conditions." Zoris's eyes shifted to a color Susan hadn't seen before. "Is this common?" "We're just beginning to understand it," Alan said. "But yes, most species show adaptive responses when exposure is properly managed. Earth doesn't just challenge, it strengthens." 2 days later, Susan and Alan sat together in the orbital conference room as the Senate representatives delivered their decision. "The Earth Adaptation Institute proposal is conditionally approved," Zoris announced. "The current tourism facility will be redesigned as a research and training center. Visitors will still come, but with a new purpose: controlled adaptation rather than mere observation." Alan felt relief wash over him. Earth would remain part of galactic society. "There are conditions," another representative added. "Strict quarantine protocols for all departing visitors, comprehensive medical monitoring, and research data must be shared with all member worlds." "We accept these terms," Alan said quickly. After the representatives departed, Susan turned to Alan. "You gambled everything on that hike." Alan nodded. "I realized something after the earthquake. We've been thinking about Earth all wrong. We saw its dangers as liabilities to be contained. But they're actually assets, challenges that can strengthen other species, just as they strengthened humanity. So what happens now? We rebuild. The Institute will focus on adaptation research, how different species can safely adjust to Earth conditions, how controlled exposure can strengthen immune systems, how Earth's unique environment might benefit the galaxy." Susan looked thoughtful. "You know, in ranger training they taught us that forests need occasional fires to stay healthy. Some pine cones only open and release seeds after intense heat." "Exactly," Alan said. "Challenge drives adaptation. Earth is the galaxy's ultimate challenge." As they prepared to return to the surface, Alan received a message from Vila. The Zithrian's words made him smile. "What is it?" Susan asked. "The first. Research volunteers have already signed up. And guess who's leading the group?" "Who?" "Krill. The Zithrian scout you rescued. Seems his partial exposure gave him a head start on adaptation. He wants to be the first alien to walk Earth's surface, with minimal protection." Susan laughed. "From emergency patient to pioneer, that's quite a journey." Outside the viewport, Earth turned slowly below them, blue and green and beautiful. No longer just a dangerous curiosity, but a world with gifts to offer, if you were brave enough to adapt to its challenges. 5 years passed. What began as the Terran Experience tourist resort had transformed into the Earth Adaptation Institute, now famous throughout the galaxy. The Wyoming facility had expanded to 3 times its original size, with new research, wings, training zones, and adaptation habitats. Alan stood in his office looking at the awards and recognitions that lined the walls. His research on cross-species environmental adaptation had revolutionized galactic medicine. What started as a way to save Earth's place in the interstellar community had become something much more important. His communication device chimed. Susan's face appeared on the screen. "They're here," she said simply. Alan hurried to the main reception area. Today marked a milestone that once seemed impossible. The reception dome buzzed with activity. Humans in researcher uniforms mingled with aliens of various species. What struck Alan most was that many of the aliens wore only light environmental suits rather than the full protective gear that was once standard. Some wore only breathing masks, their bodies otherwise directly exposed to modified Earth conditions. Susan met him by the entrance. Her ranger uniform had been replaced by the blue and green of the Institute's leadership team. 5 years as adaptation training director had earned her respect throughout the galaxy. Nervous? She asked. A little, Alan admitted. The isolates haven't made contact with anyone in over 300 years. That they're coming to Earth specifically. It validates everything we've done, Susan finished. The main doors slid open. A delegation of 7 beings entered, the representatives of the isolate worlds. They looked almost like tall humans with gray skin and large, sensitive eyes. Unlike most visitors, they wore full environmental suits. Their civilization had voluntarily cut itself off from galactic society centuries ago due to their extreme environmental sensitivity. Alan stepped forward. Welcome to Earth. I am Dr. Alan Carter, Research Director. This is Susan Wells, Adaptation Training Director. The lead delegate bowed slightly. I am Narration, speaker for the Isolate Consensus. We thank you for receiving us. It is our honor, Alan replied. If you'll follow me, we've prepared a presentation on our adaptation protocols. As they walked through the facility, Alan explained how the Institute had evolved. After the incident 5 years ago, we changed our entire approach. Instead of shielding visitors completely from Earth's environment, we developed graduated exposure techniques. They passed through the research wing where scientists from 23 worlds collaborated. Through observation windows, they could see laboratories where volunteers underwent careful adaptation treatments. The process begins with microdose exposure to individual Earth elements, single bacteria strains, specific plant pollens, controlled mineral samples, Alan explained. As tolerance develops, we increase complexity and exposure time. The isolate delegates watched with obvious interest as they entered the training center. Here, aliens in various stages of adaptation practiced, in environments that simulated Earth conditions. Our most advanced participants can now spend up to 6 hours in filtered outdoor conditions, Susan said proudly. Some species show remarkable adaptation rates. On cue, a door opened and Krill entered. The Zithrian scout who had once nearly died from a tiny suit breach now wore only a light breathing apparatus. His blue skin had darkened slightly from controlled sun exposure. This is Krill, our first success case and now head of our guide training program, Susan introduced him. Narration studied the Zithrian with amazement. Your physiological adaptation is visible. Does it cause discomfort? The process was challenging, Krill admitted. But the results have transformed my life. I can now experience sensations my species never evolved to handle. The tour continued to the medical wing, where the chief doctor, a human named Dr. Patel, joined them. The most surprising discovery, Dr. Patel explained, was that controlled exposure to Earth's challenges strengthens immune responses across all tested species. Visitors who complete even basic adaptation protocols show increased resistance to diseases on their homeworlds. Earth doesn't just challenge, it strengthens, Alan added, using the phrase that had become the Institute's unofficial motto. Finally, they reached the viewing platform overlooking the valley. Through the massive windows, the delegates could see the beauty of Wyoming's landscape. Mountains, forests, and open skies. In 2 days, Susan said, we will begin your preliminary assessment for adaptation potential. But tonight, we invite you to observe something special. As if on cue, the sky darkened and lightning flashed in the distance. A storm was rolling in. Perfect timing, Alan said with a smile. The delegates watched in wonder as rain began to fall, droplets streaming down the reinforced glass. Thunder rumbled, and more lightning illuminated the clouds. On most worlds, Alan explained, weather is controlled or non-existent. Earth's natural cycles create challenges but also beauty and renewal. Narration pressed a hand against the glass, feeling the vibration of the thunder. For centuries, we believed our environmental sensitivity was our greatest weakness. We isolated ourselves rather than risk exposure to worlds that might harm us. Many visitors felt the same way initially, Susan said. But weakness can become strength with proper understanding. We came because rumors reached even our isolated worlds, Narration said. Stories of a place where the most challenging environment in the galaxy was being harnessed to help species adapt and grow stronger, where the deadliest world had become a place of healing. Alan nodded. Earth has always been dangerous, but danger and opportunity often go hand in hand. The storm intensified outside, rain pouring down in sheets. Inside, aliens who once would have fled in terror now watched with fascination. Some were even preparing for their daily adaptation sessions, brief, controlled exposures to the very forces they once feared. In a quiet moment, Susan moved next to Alan. Did you ever imagine this when we started? Earth becoming known for healing rather than harm? Alan shook his head. I just wanted to keep Earth from being quarantined. But this is better. Much better. Beyond the glass, the storm began to clear. As if on cue, the clouds parted, and a rainbow arched across the valley. The delegates gasped at the spectacle. What is that phenomenon? Narration asked in wonder. We call it a rainbow, Susan explained. It happens when sunlight returns after rain. After difficulty, beauty, Narration translated in their own language. Perhaps that is what Earth teaches best of all. Alan smiled as he watched the delegates' reactions. Earth, once classified as a dangerous death world, had become something else entirely. A place where the galaxy's most vulnerable came to grow stronger. The very qualities that made Earth dangerous had become its greatest gift to the stars.